Hi, this is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is listening beyond the sound bites. We're continuing with our candidate interviews, and joining me today is Jennifer Harrison.
Thank you.
It's a little sub-co-hosting here. And our candidate today is Jeannine Young, who's a Republican and running for the House of Representatives at Orleans-Caledonia District. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So what encompasses Orleans-Caledonia?
Albany, Barton, Craftsbury, Glover, Greensboro, Sheffield, and Wheelock.
Whoa, you've got the longest list of anybody, I think.
7 towns.
Yeah, I love at the State House when they stand up and they just rattle them off. It's great. That's a lot of travel.
It is. It's a lot of in-between. It's hard to campaign when you have to keep going, driving, basically.
Yeah,
you can't
right.
really get out and just walk.
And you really do have to, I don't know now if you're going door to door, but in the old days when they had actual campaigns, they expected you to be at every door, every nook and cranny. So could you introduce yourselves to our audience, please? Jeannine, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, I'm a native Vermonter. I'm the middle of 9 children. I grew up on a farm in Glover until we moved to Hardwick. My husband Joe and I have 3 sons. 2 daughters-in-law, 4 grandsons, and a step-granddaughter.
Wow. I
have a paralegal certificate, and I've worked with permitting, worked with businesses trying to go through that. I was a Village of Derby Center trustee and water and sewer commissioner for nearly 15 years. I've worked and volunteered in school systems. I'm a community volunteer. I have a business supporting independent businesses, and I've been learning business practices and principles from successful business people for quite a few years. And one interesting fact about me is I was an extra in a movie in a scene with Charles Bronson.
Well, there you go. That's cool. Jennifer can add that. She's been in actual movies in Hollywood, but
oh wow,
long time ago.
Long time ago.
Lots of cutting room floors.
Yeah, really. That's exciting. He's a good guy.
Well, yeah. My husband said, "Oh, you're never going to see him." And I came home and I said, "I was in a scene with Charles Bronson."
Excellent. Good job. Where was that?
Back in the mid-'80s. We went out to San Diego in '84, so it was
nice.
87 maybe.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good job. That's so cool. Anyway, nice.
We all need Charles Bronson.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we do. He'll fix
Charles
it.
Bronson and Rambo.
Yeah, right.
I could get my SAG card.
Did you get your SAG card?
No.
So anyway, my question is, what are your key priorities with your voters that you want to take into the State House?
Well, I want to make Vermont more affordable, easier for businesses to expand. As I said, I've worked in permitting, and I know the different issues. You go from one permit to the other, and they contradict or whatever. I want to give the underprivileged a hand up instead of a hand out. I think we have too many programs where there's a cliff. You make yourself a little better, and then you lose the benefits, and there's no incentive to get off any programs. And we need to change that. And I oppose the Global Warming Solutions Act, which the governor just vetoed, so I'm pleased about that. We can do something different.
They've been working on that cliff problem for I don't know how long. It's just been forever. Yeah. I don't know how what happens is people make so much money on welfare, then they get a job that takes home less than they were making, so why bother? May as well stay home, and that's not good for anybody, not good for them, the economy, or...
No, and you can't really blame them if the system is making it better that way.
Yeah, I mean, you've got kids to raise, so you want more money. So in your first year, when you make it in January, what do you, of all the things you would really like to do, what's that one thing you'd like to accomplish next year?
Oh, the first thing, I think reforming Act 250 is an important issue, because if we don't have jobs, then what do we have?
Right.
And I don't believe Act 250 is being applied equally around the state. In the Northeast Kingdom, it took Walmart 10 years to go through from proposal to opening. 10 years? Yeah. People don't like Walmart, but who has the money to go through 10 years of permitting, paying for water and sewer they're not using because they have it allocated? So that's the kind of thing that it needs to go through quicker, and you shouldn't have businesses that will see you as competing being able to be a stumbling block. And that was part of the initial problem with the Walmart. Businesses in Newport thought they were going to be hurt by it, and put up roadblocks. And there was just a lot of stuff going on.
Right.
And
I didn't realize that. Every business I've ever talked to, they just want predictability. And Act 250 is not predictable.
no.
You know, it's a mess.
And you don't have any cohesiveness between the different permitting that you need.
Right, exactly.
I've heard that New Hampshire will assign you a person and they take you right through every step.
Oh,
and you
really?
can get your permits a lot quicker because you know what you're doing. You don't have conflicting
That's a great
things.
idea.
So if we could set that up so that one person knows all the permits you need and takes you by the hand
Right.
and helps you do
One-stop
it.
shopping or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I know after Tropical Storm Irene, they just threw out the
Right.
regs. They just let the builders go and build the roads and do whatever, and they're still here. They're not falling apart,
They
which
got
they
done.
they swore they were going to fall apart, and
Yeah.
that they were, but they're still being used. Route 4,
Yeah.
that whole area down there, it's fine. So I thought for sure they would dump some of the regulations, but no.
Yeah.
So anyway, what to do?
Well, I went through a lot of that when we did building projects for the village. So we put in
Oh.
sewer line extensions, we put in new water treatment plant, we extended lines. So I've worked with the different agencies, and it can be confusing.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you get a notice of a violation of permit when you haven't even done anything yet.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
And you're right, they don't talk, there's no coordination.
No.
But that's a really good point.
Well, I have to say something. You mentioned Walmart and how people hate Walmart. People don't
I
like
love Walmart.
Well, I have to say that every time I'm there, I always see people that I know, and they were always hiding, like, oh my God, I'm here.
My husband
they need,
lives
like,
at
a
Walmart.
busted at Walmart picture.
My husband lives at Walmart. I think wherever we vacation, we check out that Walmart.
It's so
I like
funny.
Walmart.
It's really funny
I know.
because their expressions are always like,
You saw me. It's a good place.
so anyway. In this time of seclusion, how are you reaching out to your voters and to get your message across?
Well, I have done some door-to-door with my mask,
Yeah.
and I haven't had many issues with that. I've only had maybe 3 that kind of wanted me to stay away, or somebody said put it on my mailbox or something like that, but most people have been very gracious. You know, I keep my distance, and that. I'm doing mailers. I got Facebook, webpage, you know, that kind of thing, the normal thing. Getting letters out, that sort of thing.
Good for you. That's great, because I know a couple of people have said they're door knocking, and I think people we've expected it before COVID. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't knock on everybody's door, then you hear about it.
Yeah.
You do. They go, you didn't knock on my door. I'm like,
Well, I've got the ones that hang on the door, so
Yeah,
if
right.
they don't come to the door, I
Right.
just leave it.
right. I used to try to time it so they wouldn't be home, and then I'd go and maybe you get through faster.
Right, you do.
know, because if you stop and talk, which I would do, it takes
Yeah.
a long time. But anyway, we were talking, speaking of COVID, this year in the budget, we had some money from last year and from the rainy day fund to get us through. But 2022 is going to be a bad time. And have you thought about any suggestions of how to increase the revenue and how to address all the expenses that we've got?
Well, a lot of it, I don't have all the numbers because I'm not in legislature. But I think we have to look at how the money is spent. I think we have some duplicating agencies or doing the same work. And I think that we can consolidate some of that so that they're not overlapping. That's one of the ideas I have. We need to see how our money is spent. I think there's too much of, well, last year they had this much money, so this year we're going to give them that much money.
Exactly.
Without saying, okay, but what are we getting for our money?
Right.
One successful businessman says, it's in your personal finances, it's not a money problem, it's a spending problem. So we have to see, where are we spending our money? Are we getting our dollars worth for that money?
I always think, and I don't know if they're doing this now, but zero-based budgeting.
Yes, sir.
It's 2022. What do you need to run your operation, as opposed to last year you spent this, we'll give you a 5% increase. Well, maybe they didn't need this.
Well,
It's a different year. What do you need to run your organization? They don't do that.
You're always hearing about the agencies that, well, the budget year's almost up. If I don't spend this money,
Yep.
I'll get less next year. And
Right.
so they spend it on things maybe they don't need. Or
Right.
there's also another theory of third-party purchases. It's not your money,
Oh,
You're not going to use it, so you don't care about the cost or the quality. But if you're going shopping for yourself, you look at price and you look at quality.
yeah.
And that's kind of where we are now. All government purchases are third-party purchases.
Right. And they're all low bid, which I must say is long, it sounds good, but are you getting the quality?
Right.
That's what I think needs to be put into the equation
Right.
with low bid. I mean, what are they giving you for that low bid? I don't know how you weigh quality, but sometimes it's better to spend a little more so it'll last longer, but that's
We ran
me.
into that with the water project
Did
that
you?
we did. And we won. We got what we wanted, even though it wasn't.
The low
The
bid.
lowest bid.
Yeah, great, because then they sue you if they're
Yeah.
the lowest bid, so.
Well, you have
Oh,
to
good
word
for
the
you.
contract just right.
Good for you, I'm impressed. Because that means a lot. If the quality, you can't have
Right.
it fall apart in 2 years or whatever, so. Anyway, there you go.
So the governor has said that he has, that the economy is not coming back as quickly as he hoped. What would you like to see happen?
Well, I'm afraid that the businesses that closed or had to change their practices so much, I don't think they can get back to what they were until we've been able to open up the state, which
Right.
we have to do when the time is right. It doesn't mean we have to do it immediately, but I really don't see how we can get back to where we were until we can have the state back to where it was.
Right.
We need to open up the state when we can. I think that will help. Unfortunately, some businesses won't come back,
Yeah.
and that will be.
Do you know any from your area that have already closed and given it up? Because we know some from here, mostly
specifically.
restaurants.
Right. One of the restaurants I know of, they're so small that they still have not been able to have in-person,
Oh.
in-room dining because they just aren't big enough.
Right.
And they're doing so
Takeout.
far pretty well with the takeout, but
When do you think is a good time to open up?
well, I think Vermont is almost ready to open up. We've done a good job. Everybody's praising Vermont on what we've done. Of course, Vermont is sort of socially distanced anyway. We're not like the big city where everybody's living on top of each other already.
right.
So we already had some social distancing. I think our numbers are still down. I think we could try, when we see how the schools are working,
Right.
if the schools
That's a good point.
are doing okay without
Right.
a lot of issues, then maybe we are ready to, because there's a lot of closeness in the schools,
Yeah.
the buses, that
We
kind
just
of
had
thing.
an issue in our high school. One kid had a cold, and I don't know whether it was COVID-19 or, I don't know, he's going to get tested, but the whole school
Yeah.
closed down.
Right,
Because
Yeah.
one kid had a
One
cold?
kid.
yeah,
Wow.
because you don't know
Yeah.
what.
Yeah, everybody's so,
Everyone is so careful.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see how careful they are.
Yeah. Well, especially for kids, because and us old folk, I don't think we have the resistance to fight it
Yeah.
as well. And I
Well, the
love
kids
it.
are running around without masks. You know,
Yeah.
they're playing basketball, and you see them bike riding up here because they think that they're safe because we're out in the open.
Right.
But really, no one's safe,
No.
you know,
Yeah.
until they figure out what's
Yeah,
really
but
going
you're never
on.
going to keep kids with a mask. I mean, how do you
No.
explain to a little kid in kindergarten that you have to wear the mask?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Some
hard.
people are saying that the kids have accommodated
Have
pretty
they?
well,
Oh,
Yeah.
but it's kind of hard to play sports with a mask.
right, exactly.
My
Exactly.
grandson in New Hampshire is supposed to be playing soccer with a mask on. I don't know how that.
Well,
No.
I don't think that's
good
very
for you.
healthy either. You're breathing in
Breathing
your
back
own
your-
Especially with the-
carbon dioxide or whatever it is. That's not very healthy. So anyway, this is very self-serving, my question. Campaign for Vermont and Vote for Vermont, who are in partnership together, they worked very hard for the last couple of years to get ethics brought to the State House. We were one of the only 2 states, of course, that didn't have an ethics bill, and we'd like to know what you think about getting an ethics bill with some teeth so we can actually enforce it.
Right. I am not opposed to ethics legislation. I looked at the draft online,
Right,
and some of it isn't as cut and dried as what I think it should be. Not sure if it could be, but
Yeah.
it needs to be applied fairly. You can't pick and choose who you're going to bring
Right.
up on the charges.
Right.
But one thing that I was questioning was how a politician can't take even a campaign donation if it's to influence the outcome. But at what point do you say, well, this was
Right.
a donation because you like other things, or is it a donation because they're going to vote a certain way? And I don't know how you can clarify that.
A little ambiguous, huh?
It's
Yeah.
right. It can
Right.
be, again, not fairly applied. If
I agree with you. It should be very cut and dry, so
has
there's
to
no
be.
question about why you said yes to this guy and no to that guy
Right.
or woman. Because ethics is kind of, what is ethics? It may be in
Right.
the mind of the beholder. I
Well,
mean, some of it's so egregious, you know it when you see
Right.
it.
Yeah.
But there are, as you just indicated, there are some things that are a little iffy.
right, the nuances.
Yeah, right.
Right, and you know, some of the towns have been coming up with ethics rules,
Have
but
they?
when you have small towns, everybody's related to each other. Everybody knows everybody.
Exactly.
There's only so many businesses.
Right.
That's what I mean. It gets
Yeah.
kind of hard.
And if you mention ethics, then they get very put out. How,
Right.
you know, sort of how dare you? It's the smaller towns, or towns are the ones I think
Right.
that have the most issue.
I think
That,
so. I think the contractors and I believe there are state employees who at least can be legislators. And
Oh, for sure. Right.
And that gets kind of tricky too.
Right.
If you're a state employee and yet
Right.
you're voting on the budgets, you're voting on the
Right.
the bills. I don't know.
That's interesting.
And is that an ethics violation?
Yeah, that's interesting. I have an exact example, which I will not give. But I had an employee who became a legislator, and it sort of came back to hit us because he was trying to change things that were in my department because he didn't like them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always up at the legislature going, no, there's a reason for this.
Right.
And trying to explain why we did it the way we did.
Right, and that's what the outside people don't always
Right,
know,
exactly.
the intricacies of, yes, we have to do it this way because.
Right. Yeah, interesting. Oh, interesting. See, I'm asking these questions. Everybody brings
know.
up different perspectives, which I think are great.
It's good.
Yeah.
Communication is the key to
Exactly.
existence. It's so true.
Well, I like this because any employee, any Vermonter can now have a place to go and say, I have an issue with Senator so-and-so or Representative so-and-so,
Right.
and it'll, or Commissioner, somebody in the state, and it'll be handled confidentially, and it's the right place to go.
Right,
Well,
it
that's
gives
a
you
good
an out.
thing. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes.
So, separate from Black Lives Matter and their concerns, how do you feel about the protests in Burlington, Montpelier, and nationwide? And how do you think you could bring peace, togetherness?
Well, I definitely do not like the violence or any of the damages. I think that should have been nipped in the bud immediately. My husband's a retired federal law enforcement officer, so I've got that hat on.
Yeah,
But I'm a believer in the broken window syndrome. If you don't fix it and nip it in the bud,
Right.
you have a bigger problem because they just take a little bit more. It's like giving your kids an inch and they take a mile. So I think that it should have been stopped long before this because this is not peaceful protesting. When the insurance companies are up to $9 billion
Right,
in damages.
right.
That's not peaceful
they're
protesting.
wiping out all towns.
That's right,
Yeah.
and that never should have been allowed. That should have been stopped. And in some of those areas, the prosecutors are not going to file charges, so the police's hands are tied. And I think it only exacerbates the police position because they don't know who's friendly and who's not, and
Right.
they're on edge because they're being shot from sitting in your car.
Right, that was unbelievable.
What kind of thing is that? But I think that if you keep pushing the differences, you're not going to come together.
Exactly.
You need to, I know we've seen where if you don't exactly agree with what the Black Lives Matter statement is, you're automatically being labeled a racist.
Right.
We had that in town, and I was like, we're just a small
What?
town.
Right.
Or the white privilege. Not every white person had privilege.
No.
From the age of 12, I earned all my own money for school clothes and everything I needed.
Yeah.
So is that white privilege? I don't know, but I wouldn't call it that.
I think Black Lives Matter is first and foremost about police brutality, and that's what they're focusing on. At least that's what Don Lemon says. It's
Right.
all about that. It's not about, David Dorn or the police being shot in their cars. It's not about that. It's
No.
about police brutality against
Black people,
right.
and it really is a serious issue, of course. But I wish people could come together and communicate and talk,
Yeah.
and instead of the violence. That's
But I
just my
think Jeannine
opinion.
is
I'm
right.
sorry.
The minute that they blocked traffic in Burlington on Pearl Street, get it done.
Knock it out.
Done.
But
Just
I mean,
stop.
Violence never helps. Violence begets violence,
Right.
and that's
Right.
Martin Luther King.
And now it's like,
Right.
and they keep escalating because nobody's stopping them. And I feel bad for the police because I think a lot of them have, not a lot, but several have stepped down and said, I can't operate like
Right.
this. You won't let me do my job.
Yeah.
right. I mean, I have, all 4 of my grandsons are part Asian. And, you know, somebody will look at me and say, I'm racist. Well, I've got 4 Asian grandchildren they don't even know about. And
But
then
they don't
you
care.
have,
They don't care.
no. Then you have the nuances of 2 of them are half Filipino, but the Ivy League colleges don't call them minorities because Philippines is no longer considered a
Oh.
Pacific
Oh, a
Islanders.
Pacific Rim? Oh, no kidding. I didn't know that.
You're
okay,
kidding.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So people, you know, so who's going to determine what's a minority, what's racist?
But they
what's
won't
not?
even spend the time to know that from you,
No,
you know?
no.
Well, I'm
Because
proud
they-
that I have a Hispanic daughter.
Well, there you go. But they don't care. That's the thing. They don't. If they look at you and they will go right
Oh, yeah.
to white supremacists and.
Well, I'd like to know the percentage of the multiracial families in America. I'd love to know that
Yeah.
because I don't think anyone really is, you know.
No, none of us. Well, none of us are I don't know what, but you know, Irish, French, German,
yeah.
blah blah blah, and I just don't
Because
understand.
even in
There's
Middle
a lot
America, people
Yeah.
are interracial.
It's called the
Right.
melting pot for a reason.
A lot of interracial marriages
Yeah,
in Middle
yeah.
America.
But I don't,
Anyway.
as much as one life is too much, so don't be
Right.
yelling at me. But the statistics of how many, it's not that many people, and I know one is too many.
Right.
I get that part. But it's like an 11 versus I don't know how many of white people, but
Right.
there is no global brutality. I think the training has to be better, and they need to focus on the changing world and that sort of stuff. So I agree with that, but
Yes,
this
yes.
hatred is incredible.
One thing that's the problem is the media has these little clips, or people have their little clip of a cell phone
Yeah.
video. They don't see the beginning or they don't
Right,
see the end of
right.
it. And then when the truth comes out, they've already been so enraged they don't
Right.
listen to what the
Right.
truth is.
Yeah, they've already made up their minds.
Right, and they don't understand that. Just recently, when the gentleman had a knife, they don't know the statistics of how fast a knife can come at you before you get
right.
your gun out.
Yeah, we're actually we go to gun school together. We're learning how to shoot, and our instructor told us about when somebody's got momentum with a knife.
Right.
If you shoot them, they still have that momentum. So you have to shoot them at a certain
Right.
a number of feet away, otherwise you're going to get caught in that momentum. And nobody knows that. They all go, well, he just had a knife. Well,
Or just a rock.
yeah, right. Just placed appropriately, and
Tell
you know,
that to
your
the border.
life. Yeah.
Tell that to the border patrol agent whose brain was hanging out from just a rock.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know.
It's just terrible.
It's awful.
So yeah.
Anyway, so I was going to ask you about defunding the police, but I do think we've
Yeah,
covered that. So why don't you go
definitely
ahead and that's a no.
Really?
Yeah, really, no.
So why do you think that you are the best candidate for the position?
Well, I think I'm the best candidate for the Orleans-Caledonia district because I know the issues and the history that have affected our district and the state over the years. I'm a native of the Northeast Kingdom. I didn't have to move here to find out what the issues were or who the people
lived
were.
them.
I've lived them.
Yeah.
And I've proven my ability to get things done. As I mentioned, I was a trustee and water sewer commissioner in Derby Center. I was able to prove to the state why Derby Center should have a slow sand filtration system as opposed to the kind where you put even more chemicals into your water. I, at that point, was dealing with the Agency of Transportation, and they said they wanted to put an island in at the intersection at Derby, Route 5 and 105 where they come together. It's a T. They said they were going to put in an island. I said, are you kidding? The trucks won't be able to get through. They'll be driving over it all the time. Why don't you just paint an island to direct the traffic? They did that. And at the same,
Was there a general store at the corner? there?
There's a little store on the corner with a gas station.
Oh, okay. No,
Yeah.
that's wrong. I'll have to tell you a story about it.
Then, so they did that, but I said, why don't you just put in a three-way stop? How hard is that?
Right.
Well, this was way over 20 years ago. About 3 years ago, that's what they did. They put in a three-way stop.
Good for you.
So I think I've proven that I
Common
have.
sense.
It's common
I
sense.
propose workable, common sense solutions, and I've been doing that for many years.
A woman
That's
with
great.
an eye.
That's great.
Or,
Well, some things are pretty obvious, but others who are knee-deep in the details don't see it, right?
well, sometimes common sense does more than an education.
Exactly.
My husband's father was a road commissioner for 30 years in Craftsbury.
Right.
And the state came in and was going to put in a certain size culvert. And Henry says, that's not big enough. Oh, yes, it's big enough. Next year, they had to come back and guess what? Put in a bigger culvert. Because if you're on the ground and see it.
You can see.
Right, and some of the state employees who are on the roads, they're not, they're not the engineers, they're the workers.
Right.
And they've done it for years, and they go, you can't do it that way. What do you mean? Because it won't work. No, you got to listen to the engineer, and it doesn't work. You have to go back and do it the way the
Right.
person on the ground has said this is what we should have done.
Good for you. That's great.
So I think that's the kind of solutions we need in Montpelier, not people who have a degree and think they know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
People who've lived it.
Yeah. And that's a great area, I must say. That really is. As I told you, my husband was stationed up there, and he's got some great stories of
Right.
just him helping people, people helping him, and
Right.
it's just a community up there. It's great.
And people who have, like I said, they don't have the degree, but they have the life experience.
Right. And that counts for a lot.
They know
Right.
how to fix things.
Right. Well, I think you're on the right track for sure.
I hope so.
I really thank you for coming on board. Thank you, Jennifer,
Thank
for
you.
helping out, and thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.